Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Rikudou, the One Above All by Novus Maximus. An extraordinary man dies, Naruto of course, in one world and awakes in another. A genius unrivaled in the use of his abilities that he once thought to be mere fiction. Witness the rise of the pillar of strength that shall hold the world up with the godly power that is within all. For he is the one avatar of the six paths reborn upon this world. He will be extremely overpowered and will have Renegan and EMs. I don't own anything, adios.
Today was the day of the UA Sports Festival. Normally this day would be celebrated by the families of those that take part in it. This didn't happen in my family. Oh sure, I wished Izuku good luck, but I don't really think that he'll need it. Chakra is the ultimate tool of war in this world and Izuku is a sage on top of it. Even if he can only bring out 15% of One for All's true power, that is still more than enough to deal with most of his classmates. I must underline the most aspect of this statement. Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki, they will be Izuku's challenge. I'm sure that Izuku can deal with Katsuki easily, if he allows himself to let go of their emotional connection. In Todoroki's case, things are a bit different. If Izuku learns of his situation and the mental block that prevents him from using his fire, then, who the fuck do I think I'm kidding? Izuku won't let this rest, not until he's saved him. I won't stop him. It's not my place to intervene in what Izuku's doing. But if Endeavor just so happens to lay off his son for a little bit, no one would be suspecting me. Endeavor is akin to a mad dog and if he can't be trained and leashed, then he's better off dead. Sir, the festival is staring, came the voice of my secretary. I'm off then. Please see to it that the analysis department finishes their analysis on Stain's movement patterns today. Mark it as top priority if you have to, I said. Of course, sir. I turned and walked to the open window and I was off, flying towards UA. The trip was short. The distance between Might Tower and UA isn't that great and I was flying at just under the speed of sound. It wouldn't do to get complaints from the people bellow about the sonic booms that I produce when flying at full speed. I came down to land at the entrance to the stadium. They didn't have to verify my identity, not when the entire stadium is under a fuinjutsu barrier of my own design. It won't stop an intruder, but it will detect them a lot better than other safety equipment. After that it was a straight shot to the booth that I will be staying alongside the UA faculty and top pro heroes. As soon as I arrived the event started with Present Mike's loud voice blaring out of the speakers. It amused me to see that Aizawa had somehow been roped into attending. Blackmail? Probably, though I struggled to see why would Aizawa even allow such blackmail to exist in the first place. On second thought, it may just be that Mike has hidden it well and I know that Aizawa cares about him as a friend, so torture or counter blackmail is off the table. My thoughts are getting too dark, aren't they? Anyways, back to the event. It started with the usual slow walk of the students from their respective gates. Of course, 1A got the most attention. After all they did survive a villain attack, even if all they did was hide inside a barrier powered by Izuku's chakra. Come to think of it, what has Izuku been doing for the past few weeks? I was at Might Tower almost all the time and I didn't get the chance to speak with him in quite some time, though by the looks of things he is determined to win this. For the athlete's oath, the hero course representative Izuku Midoriya. To be expected, though I'm curious to see what his speech may be. I don't know what to say, moron, but I will say this. This sports festival is the beginning of our journey as heroes in the eyes of the world, so everyone do your best, plus ultra. The crowd cheered. Well, it was simplistic, but understandable. They don't expect a kid to have any kind of experience motivating people and my case was exceptional to the extreme. Still, the hype is there as they prepared to enter the first challenge. It was, just like with me, an eliminatory round to cut down from the 200 plus students to a more manageable set. As midnight revealed the challenge I couldn't help but grin. Obstacle course. A better matchup couldn't exist. As the horn blared the start of the challenge, Izuku was off in a streak of green light with Katsuki spouting insults hot on his heel. He managed to neatly dodge the ice that Todoroki used to stop the rest of the students by running up the wall and on the ceiling. Wow, look at this kid go. Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya easily takes the lead in style, yelled Mike. As I look around me I couldn't help but overhear what all the others were saying. Looking at Izuku's bastardization of my lighting armor, it's easy to draw parallels between him and me. I could hear the media doing it too. God, I hate them. It's not just the quirk that makes the hero but also how he uses it. Next up, Robot Inferno, yelled Mike. This was a relatively easy event as Izuku made himself look like a green ping pong ball as he jetted from one robot to the other, most often than not leaving heaps of scrap in his wake. He easily cleared the area and went ahead. Man, Eraser. What are you teaching them? Don't look at me like that. The problem child came that way. That's right. Let's not forget that Izuku Midoriya is the brother of none other than Madara Midoriya, the current head of Might Tower Agency and youngest pro hero ever. But let's also not forget the most important part. He's All Might's anointed heir and successor. Okay. Where are you going with this, Mike? He's not the only talent in the class. Right behind him are Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki, another heroic legacy as the son of the number 2 hero, Endeavor. I looked at the screen that was now following those two. Todoroki seemed to be highly annoyed, and his annoyance was somewhat visible in the vicious way he dealt with the robots. Katsuki was the same, though his rage was clearly visible as he seemingly used every curse word under the sun and then some, all the while violently tearing through the robots on his way to the next obstacle. Here comes the next obstacle, the fall. Sure enough, there was a giant chasm with a few pillars sticking up from its depth. They were connected to each other by rope, and it seemed sturdy enough for even the heaviest person in the group to be able to cross. Izuku was, of course, the first to arrive. He didn't stop though and took a leap through the air, landing on the middlemost pillar. Another giant leap and he was on the other side, powering forwards. Man, this kid's unstoppable, though it is to be expected seeing as he has the blood of the symbol of strength in him. It's not just power on his side, but also skill. Even with all that power, if you don't channel it the right way, all you'll end up doing is destroying your surroundings. Just like his brother, he has impeccable control over his power. Damn, Eraser, I didn't think you had a soft spot. It's a rational observation, I snorted. Yeah, right. Aizawa's the biggest softie short of All Might. Hey, I just figured out something. Since he's Madara's brother and Madara is All Might's heir, does that make him the Prince of Peace? What on earth are you talking about? I mean, look, All Might's the symbol of peace, Madara is the symbol of strength. So shouldn't Izuku be something like that? Maybe the symbol of hope? I looked at All Might. He seemed as stunned as me and the rest of the teachers, bar Nezu, who was smiling. Did you put him up to this? I asked the rat. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied. Yeah, right. I bet this was all done by your order. It seems that my disbelieving expression was noticed by Nezu. I did not tell Mike to put Izuku in the spotlight like this, but it was inevitable for someone to make the connection, said Nezu. But still, isn't it a bit early to call him that? Asked All Might. Not at all. After all, Madara was given a similar title at a much younger age. I swear that rat is smiling. All Might has a right to be worried. What Mike has done is elevate Izuku to the rank of a symbol. Izuku won't be allowed to show any sort of weakness after this. All Might, Izuku and me are now the 3 symbols of society. Should even one of us fall or falter, the whole system could collapse. Don't be like that, you moron. Izuku Midoriya hasn't done any title. But he can, can't he? After all, his brother was named the symbol of strength after finishing his sports festival and event early, so couldn't he do the same? Damn it, Mike. You had one job and you ruined it. If Izuku doesn't finish first in all events, then he would have to work much harder for his place at the top and to earn the recognition befitting a symbol. Here we go again, folks. Midoriya has just reached the final obstacle, the minefield. Don't worry though, all these mines would do is spray you with paint when they explode. The green blur that was Izuku sped through the mines, without a care in the world, and the mines all exploded in a giant cloud of pink paint. Izuku won, obviously. Man, this kid's truly unstoppable. The winner of the first event, Izuku Midoriya. The little shit waved at the crowd. He wasn't even tired, though I suspect that Katsuki is more pisses at this than anyone, judging by the near mental breakdown he's having over there. Meanwhile, in the arena, Izuku was having the time of his life. He'd heard what President Mike had said and was determined to live up to their expectations. This is how I'm going to do it, Nissan, All Might. I'm going to win this festival and prove myself worthy of your faith and power. Izuku looked towards the podium where Midnight was explaining the rules. He knew that the sports festival always had 3 stages. A first stage to weed out most of the students, then a cooperative stage, and finally a 1 versus 1 tournament to decide the victor. If there's one thing that Izuku learned from his brother, it was that life wasn't fair. As such, he made sure to have contingencies in place to deal with almost all situations. After all, he did spend the better part of a month, before and after the USJ incident, learning the water walking technique and studying Fuinjutsu. As Midnight explained the event, Izuku couldn't help but touch the area on his right arm that was now covered with a forearm guard. Under that thin piece of fabric lay his greatest discovery and weapon. A storage seal, or the closest approximation of the concept that Izuku could reasonably create. He couldn't wait to see his brother's face when he saw what he had created. Unbeknownst to him, a maniacal grin stretched across Izuku's face, making him look then much more like his slightly deranged brother. Up in the stands, Madara saw this as well and gave a small smirk of his own, all the while powering his Sharingan for the fight ahead of him. Izuku's planning something, and it's going to be great, I said in a sing-song voice, all the while looking down at the arena with a demented grin on my face. Should someone do something? Asked Snipe quietly in the back. No, it's all right, I think, replied All Might without much confidence. You should pay more attention to your successor's team, All Might. You'll see something very interesting about to happen, said Nezu as he drank some tea. Where the hell he took that tea from, I have no idea, so I'll just roll with it. He was right, though. Izuku's team was something else. Unlike everyone else from his class, his team was made up from a Gen Ed student, a support course student and another from his class, the kid with the shadow, Tokiyami I think his name was. That's a most unusual lineup. I can see some reason as to what he would want the support course girl and Tokiyami, but the Gen Ed student, I shrugged. I believe that he chose them because they are friends, said Nezu. I raised an eyebrow. Friends? He didn't tell me he made friends. Tough. To be fair, I haven't been home much since he started school and all the time I did spend at home was mostly to sleep in a bed rather than my office couch. I said nothing as I continued to look down on the field. I saw the support girl give Izuku some unusual equipment that was imbued with chakra. Something's wrong. I said this drew the attention of the pros. What do you mean? Asked All Might worriedly. The equipment the support girl is giving Izuku, is it allowed? I asked. Powerloader frowned. It is. I checked it myself. Hatsume Mei is one of the rising stars in the support department. That gun is supposed to fire net cartridges to incapacitate the other students. Nothing too dangerous. I continued to look down, only half paying attention to Powerloader's explanation. Though my Sharingan I could see the truth of the matter. I laughed. I couldn't stop myself. Young Madara, is something wrong? Asked All Might with concern. Oh, it's nothing, All Might. I'm just happy, that's all. Izuku's proven himself craftier than he looks, I said. Oh, do enlighten us, said Nezu. I turned towards the rat and smirked. He knew what was going on. Heck, he probably even approved of it. Izuku's going to win, easily. That gun you see, they have been modifying it from the moment the team assembly timer first started. If I'm not mistaken, that's now a chakra rifle, I said. What? How could this happen? That weapon is dangerous, we can't allow that, exploded Powerloader as he got up, presumably to confiscate the weapon. You will do nothing, I stated, allowing my chakra to leak out and exert my presence over the seating area. Powerloader was stopped dead in his tracks. Madara is right. You will do nothing. They have not gone against the rules set for them by us and a lot of the quirks that our students use are just as dangerous, if not more. Besides, I'm sure that weapon isn't as powerful as the one Madara uses, said Nezu. I retracted my presence and that allowed Powerloader to breathe again, though sweat could be seen coating his entire body. Nezu is correct. That rifle design is inefficient at best. All it'll do is numb the area of the body where it hits and create a small explosion if it strikes the ground due to its kinetic energy. You have nothing to worry about, I said. The match started shortly afterwards. As expected, there was a big rush towards Izuku. What was not expected was the rifle in Izuku's hands to start barking out high-velocity emerald bolts of energy, forcing a majority of the teams to stay away. Some stray bolts even hit a couple of students and made one of the teams to break apart. In an unexpected turn of events, Izuku Midoriya keeps everyone away with a weapon created by Hatsume Mei. Even so, it seems that there are some who are willing to brave the fire to get that headband. It was true. The teams led by Todoroki and Katsuki were closing in. Katsuki was relying on Kirishima's hardening to weather the storm and Todoroki was using a mixture of his ice powers and Yaoyorozu's creation quirk. Even so, Izuku's team was holding their own. If what Nezu said about them being friends was right, then they could have planned this, or at the very least planned to use Hatsume's equipment. That equipment seems specially designed to give a high degree of mobility to whomever wore it. That was evidenced by the fact that Izuku took a jetpack flight away from his team and into the air. With my Sharingan I could see the thin line of chakra that tied Izuku to a device on Hatsume's belt. It was ingenious and really, I shouldn't have underestimated the amount of chakra Izuku has. Right now, I'd say that he has the same quantity as I did when I was 12, so I suppose that somewhere in the upper Chunin, but not quite Jonin. Still, he rationed what little chakra he had wonderfully. In a way his control over chakra is even better than mine, though that may be because he had help from One for All and the nature energy within. With the horse and rider separated, Izuku's team had a greater range of options than what the others even though possible. It didn't really matter if the horse changed configuration now that Izuku was relatively safe in the air. It came as a surprise to both the audience and the competitors when Izuku's teammates began attacking and stealing headbands. Would you look at that? Class 1 AZ Izuku Midoriya is reigning as the undisputed ruler of the field. I'd say it's pretty clear folks, this kid is going places. I smirked. Oh, would you look at that? Katsuki is Trump. Though I have to say that the choice to blast himself in the air came just in the nick of time, otherwise his headband might have been snatched away by some B-class reject. You're not dissing my class, are you? Asked Vlad with narrowed eyes. No, yes he was still glaring at me, though I could feel Aizawa's condescending smirk from here. At any rate, the battle between Katsuki and Izuku became an aerial dogfight, with each combatant trying their level best to knock the other out of the sky. It came to a point where Izuku's gun was too damaged by the explosions it took to save its wielder and Izuku had to toss it. Of course, he tossed the weapon at Katsuki, who, like a moron, caught the weapon and squeezed one last shot that damaged Izuku's jetpack. The gun promptly exploded in his hands and sent Katsuki crashing down to earth. That is if he wasn't snatched back by one of his teammates, who then proceeded to give Katsuki the few headbands that they had collected. Of course, the hothead set off in hot pursuit of Izuku, only to have his path blocked by a wall of ice. He screamed, as was ordinary for Katsuki when something doesn't go as planned. 2 minutes left. I looked at the leaderboard. Izuku's team was in first place, followed by Todoroki's, then Bakugo's and Tesutetsu. Todoroki had cornered Izuku with some ice and used Kaminari's electricity to try and take out their team, to no avail. Then something interesting happened. Todoroki's team was shot forward by Ida using some kind of overdrive technique, and Izuku's headband got stolen. Although Ida's overdrive seemed to make him motionless, or at the very least paralyzed for a short time. Izuku used this to his advantage as he closed the gap and charged up for a punch. For a fraction of a second, Todoroki's left arm burst into flames, but once Izuku sped past, they were quickly extinguished. The horn blared. That's the end, folks. First place in the headband with the 1,000,000 points goes to Team Midoriya. It seems that the king of this festival hasn't been dethroned yet. Second place, Team Todoroki. Third place, Team Bakugo, and finally fourth place, Team Tesutetsu. The 16 champions of this round will be advanced to the next, the one-on-one tournament to decide the winner of this sports festival. For the rest, we've prepared games that all are welcome to partake, even the ones that got to the next round. We'll be taking a break for now, but until then these are the matches. I looked at the screen and the matches went like this. Midoriya vs Denki Kaminari, Todoroki vs Shiro Hanta. Ashido vs Abara Shiozaki, Shinso vs Yosetsu Awase. Honanuki vs Fumikage, Tokiyami Mei vs Ida, Tenya Kirishima vs Tesutetsu. Katsuki vs Momo Yaoyorozu. I left the stands shortly after that announcement and went to find Izuku. On my way down, I met two unexpected people. All Might, Endeavor. I greeted calmly. The two top heroes turned towards me. Rikudou, I didn't expect to see you here, rumbled Endeavor. Ho, you think I wouldn't come and see my little brother's first sports festival? I shot back. Endeavor was visibly grinding his teeth at my reply. Now, let's not be hasty. This is a chance for all the young students of UA to shine, said All Might, attempting to defuse the situation. That's quite correct, All Might, I said as I began walking towards the stairs. As I passed by Endeavor, I said in a low tone that ensured only he could hear, "Be careful that you don't snap the leash." I continued down the stairs towards the cantina. I didn't look back to see what Endeavor's expression would be like. I already know his thoughts. Endeavor is not foolish enough to think that the Hero Commission doesn't know about his abusive behavior towards his family, and what saved his ass so far was his usefulness as a hero. Furthermore, the commission helped cover up the death of Toya Todoroki and his wife's mental breakdown. For these two crimes alone, Endeavor could lose his license and custody over Shoto, as well as a good portion of his wealth and all of his prestige. My words were a warning and a threat. Should he take a single step out of bounds, I can and will destroy him, and he know it. After some time, I found Izuku on a bench under a tree not too far from where the entrance to the student waiting rooms were. Izuku, I called out with a smile. He looked up at me, seemingly startled by my presence. What could have caused this? Due to Izuku's sage abilities, his sensory abilities are far beyond what mine could ever be. Oh, Ni-san. Hi, did you see me? Asked Izuku excitedly. I chuckled and ruffled his hair. Of course I did. Symbol of hope, I said with a slight grin. Izuku blushed and beamed up at me. So, mind telling me why you're moping under this tree? Not that I disapprove or anything, it's quite the spot you found, I asked. Instantly, Izuku lost his smile and his previous sullen mood returned. He was silent for a few moments. I didn't speak and just sat down next to him. If one was to see us, they would be surprised by the similarities between us, despite the fact that I was wearing battle armor and Izuku a simple sport get-up. Ni-san, what would you do if you see someone suffering and don't know how to help them? Asked Izuku. Ah, I see, the Todoroki problem has reared its head. Well, I would go and seek advice, kind of like you just did. But I think I know who you're talking about, I said. Izuku's head snapped towards me and his eyes went wide. I could almost see his inner thoughts and turmoil. But began Izuku. Tell me, what do you think of this festival? I asked abruptly. He blinked. It's important for our careers, said Izuku, but his tone betrayed his uncertainty. From one point of view, that's true. My journey as the symbol of strength began here, and yours will too. When people ask where did the symbol of hope begin, most will point out this day as the origin of your legend. However, there's another facet to this great sham, as I like to call it, I said in a humorous tone as I tuned my hard eyes onto Izuku and looked straight into his. Dark green boring into light green. It's here, at this sport festival, where careers are bought and sold, made and unmade, all the while the masses look on in awe, and from this awe the media companies and the Hero Commission forge the image of the pure, Just an exceptional heroes that has been shoved down your and every other child's throat since they could understand what a hero was. Izuku was silent, struggling to come to grips with what I said. Now tell me this, Izuku. What would happen if suddenly the world lost all might? Endeavor would step up as the #1 hero, at least until I take his place. Sure, there will be some turmoil and villains would spike in activity, but it would be a rather smooth transition of power. The image of the unbeatable heroes isn't really broken. The world would eventually forget about All Might and move on. Now think what will happen if Endeavor's acts of abuse against his family were to come out. The world will lose its trust in heroes, said Izuku. I nodded gravely. But it's not right, can't the Hero Commission do anything? Asked Izuku in a fit of sudden anger. I raised an eyebrow. The Hero Commission helped cover Endeavor's tracks, I explained. Izuku recoiled as if struck. What? I sighed. They provided the contacts that ensure Endeavor was able to make Rei's family give her up to him. They provided the doctors that checked on and delivered all 4 children of the Todoroki family, of which Shoto is the youngest. They provided the specialist expertise to Endeavor so that he could mold Shoto into the next All Might, and finally they covered up the death of Endeavor's fist-born son, Toya Todoroki. Izuku looked sick. How could they have done that? Aren't they supposed to be the good guys? I snorted. They're bureaucrats. All they care about is to maintain the status quo. The only reason why I don't have their leash on my neck is because they know that nothing could stop me if I turned to villainy. Not only that, but I also hands with many large corporations that make huge profits from the technology I sell them. If I wanted to, I could make support gear that much more expensive nationwide, and it doesn't stop there. Japan's overpopulated with heroes and most of them aren't of the best quality. Fact of the matter is that most heroes aspirants with so-called villainous quirks that could be truly useful in the field, much like your friend from the general course, often find better offers abroad. Now imagine the hit to Japan's reputation if I suddenly leave for America or England. All it will take is a couple of interviews and suddenly all the heroes in Japan will have their reputation smeared, and then they can do one of 2 things. They either remain on the sinking ship, or they leave in disgust, bringing even more shame down on Japan. Do you see now just how much power words have? How easily I could ruin an entire county by just a few words. Izuku was silent. I couldn't blame him. All his life, heroes have been larger than life figures. The mere idea that something could send this house of cards come crashing down was horrifying. Why didn't they stop Endeavor before he did this? Asked Izuku. By the time Endeavor decided to put this plan into motion, he was already the #2 pro hero, second only to All Might and one of the world's most powerful heroes. How difficult would you think it would have been for him to do all he has done without the Commission's aid? I'll tell you, not very. All the Commission has done is help streamline the process and ensure that this doesn't turn into a scandal of epic proportions. Furthermore, what could they have done? Sick All Might on him? To convict Endeavor, one would need solid proof of his deeds, and by that time, Endeavor had amassed enough money and influence that the government wouldn't dare go against one of their hardest working and most successful heroes, I said. So, it all boils down to politics in the end, doesn't it? Asked Izuku in a depressed tone. This is how it's always been and how it always will be. All that anyone can do is try and fix what they can and entrust the rest to the next generation, I said. We sat like this for a few moments until Izuku got up. I had to go and think. Thanks, Nisan, said Izuku. One more thing, I said, causing Izuku to look back. You have to win this, no matter what. The world's had its eyes on you. You embody the best in us and the hope for a better tomorrow. You can't let that flame die out, not for me and not for anyone. Do you understand, Izuku? Yeah, I do, said Izuku as he walked away. I watched him go. Honestly, it looked like he was carrying the entire world on his shoulders. I didn't want to do this, but it's better than to let Izuku go out unprepared. Only time will tell if I made the right choice. A.N. Chapter done. Sorry for the wait. Anyways, this was the first part of the sports festival. Originally I wanted to do it all in one chapter, but then I realized that I was already pushing 5k words and I didn't want to make the next chapter bland. Now, question time. I've recently come across a FIC of the same genre as this one about a hidden society of chakra users, and that got me thinking. What would happen if such a society did indeed exist? Would it be like the MLA? Manga spoilers asterisk. Or different? Considering the power discrepancy between the run-of-the-mill hero and a shinobi, I'd say that, should a society like this exist, it would have a pretty big impact. The following is a preview of how a story like this would look like. Not all men are created equal. This he knew since he was little more than a 4-year-old boy, when society threw him to the side because he wasn't special. Little did they know of just how special he was. In this world of superpowers, there is one that stands above all others. It's a mystical energy that connects its users together and grants them abilities beyond what any normal person could conceive. The users of this power called it chakra. They are the forgotten relics of a humanity that deemed them old and outdated. Little did they know of the hidden potential within these special individuals, for you see, while 80% of the world today has a quirk, They can't truly pass on their knowledge and power to the next generation, not unlike chakra users can. And as quirkless people become ever rarer, their chakra becomes ever more powerful. This is the story of Izuku Midoriya and his journey to become the greatest legend of the world. With the first 2 stages of the sports festival over, now came a small reprieve for the students and the public. This was, of course, filled with meaningless games and activities just so they could justify the existence of the other courses' participation in this event. After all, not many business or support students are actually interested in the chance to join the hero course, and only a few have ever made it from general studies into the hero course. The only one in recent history being Aizawa. The activities were boring for the most part, and I left my seat to go and mingle with the other pro heroes. Such an act was extremely important. I held a great deal of political power and influence in the Japan, and my status as a boy genius and a nearly unrivaled powerhouse has made waves across the world. My revolutionary work in advancing science and technology alongside the innovations my company is churning out made me a very rich person, and that was besides my work as a hero and the massive amounts of money I was getting from merchandise deals and the various talk shows and news programs that I've been invited to over the past 2 years. I wasn't living like a rich person, though. In fact, I haven't even moved out from the small 3-room apartment that my family was given after they were taken into the Commission's protection program. I wasn't worried about the Commission holding my mother hostage to put a leash on me, since any such acts, even from a third party, would prove either incompetence or corruption at the highest levels of the Commission. Here we go again, folks. The third act of this sports festival, the 1 vs 1 tournament. First off, we have the electrifying Denki Kaminari against the winner of both the previous events, the fledgling symbol of hope, Izuku Midoriya. The crowd roared as Izuku stepped onto the stage. I couldn't help but grin as I looked down with my Sharingan. Start. In a split second, Izuku vanished into a body flicker and emerged high above the arena just as his opponent discharged his entire electrical stock on Izuku. This resulted in Kaminari being reduced to a bumbling moron, and Izuku quite easily kicked him out of the arena. The first match is over. Izuku Midoriya moves forward. Next up, the heroic legacy of Endeavor, Shoto Todoroki. Against him stands the kid with the tape coming out of his elbows, Shiro Hanta. The match was over in seconds. Shiro did a good job, but Todoroki threw an iceberg at him. Yeah, that's not really fair, is it? Honestly, the kid was lucky the iceberg came in my direction, as I was able to put up a 3-layered row eyes over the stands that was able to tank the iceberg and shatter it as it crashed against the shield. I may have shattered the ground where I stood, but to be honest, that kid packed a serious punch. Probably not as much as Izuku, but enough to give my brother serious issues, especially unarmed. I, of course, helped with the cleanup of the arena. I simply spat out a fire-style flamethrower big enough to engulf the whole glacier and melted it. Next up, we have someone from Class 1B, the girl with vines for hair, Abara Shiozaki, and against her stands 1A's Ashido Mina. Lame people, lame fight. Ashido was warped up like a bun and thrown out of the arena before her acid could really take effect. I have to admit that Ashido was athletic, but Abara's defenses were too tough for Ashido's acid. The next contestants are 1B's Yosetsu Awase and 1C's Shinso Hitoshi. Is it just me, or did Mike run out of things to say about these people? At any rate, the fight began. Shinso said something and Yosetsu replied, and suddenly Yosetsu turned around and forfeited the match. What? I've got to speak with Izuku about this guy. The entrance exam is irrational. It's heavily biased against those with flashy quirks, and those like Shinso Hitoshi's brainwash are left behind and slip through the cracks. I sat back down as I heard Aizawa's voice. Brainwash, huh? An interesting quirk, and if what I saw is right, it's activated by a reply from the target. Its effects are quite similar to my Sharingan's hypnotic abilities, and who knows, maybe with enough practice it may even rival the power of a Mangekyo Sharingan's Koto Amatsukami. That is a terrifying thought, and it makes my heart beat with excitement. I'll be sure to give this guy an internship, though that still depends on how he does in the next few rounds. Now, let's grade our next contestants. Class 1A's Fumikage Tokiyami and 1B Honanuki Juzo. The battle was somewhat long-lasting, but in the end it was just a bore. Tokiyami used Dark Shadow to keep himself from sinking, and he threw out his opponent from the arena. And now we have Hatsume Mei from the support department against 1A's Tenya Ida. This fight was a disaster. A cringe-worthy disaster. For Ida at least. Well, that will teach him not to be too trusting in the future. The next fight was between 2 hardening quirk users in Kirishima and Tesutetsu. They beat each other senseless and knocked one another unconscious. It looked nice, but to my trained eyes I could see that this was no better than a bar brawl. In the end I dismissed them. Next up was a fight that I was interested in, Katsuki versus the Yaoyorozu heiress. The match started well enough, with Katsuki throwing out explosions like confetti. I could see that he was weary of Yaoyorozu. That girl most certainly had the knowledge necessary to create a neutralizing agent against Katsuki's nitroglycerin sweat. Even so, I could see Yaoyorozu losing. She was unable to keep up with the pace Katsuki had set, and that was her first mistake. She allowed Katsuki to gain control of the battle and thusly sealed her fate. 5 minutes later, Katsuki came out the winner and was moving forward. Now came an exciting battle. Izuku vs Shoto. Izuku stepped up to the arena. He was angry, especially after his little run-in with Endeavor. Shoto was waiting for him as he walked up the steps of the arena. "You came," said Shoto. "Of course I did. I still have to beat your sorry ass and break your stupid dad's pride," said Izuku. All this talk about politics was grating, and Izuku never really had the best control over his rage. Oh sure, he had thick skin. That was a prerequisite for any quirkless hoping to survive past his 10th birthday with their mental health intact, and he had a long fuse, otherwise Katsuki would have been long dead by now, but he tended to explode quite violently when he was at his limit. Again, normally that wasn't that much of a problem. A good spar with Madara usually took care of all the pent-up emotion he had accumulated during the day, and if needed Izuku could last quite a while without releasing his frustrations. Unfortunately, his brother spent the past 2 weeks at Might Tower trying to dig up more info on his inherited arch-nemesis, All For One, and his pets. This wouldn't have been such an issue, if not for what he learned about the Todoroki family situation and the conspiracy to hide it all. Izuku had always considered himself a peaceful person. He never struck back, never tried to get anyone into trouble. He'd been a model student all his life, but he couldn't help but feel a burning desire to rip out Endeavor's intestines and strangle the man with them. The same went for the higher-ups of the Hero Commission. Was this society all a lie? Was everything the people saw just a well-crafted lie to keep them in line? He would get his answers, that Izuku swore, but first he had to help his classmate, his friend, to overcome his demons. "Are you ready?" asked Midnight. Shoto took a stance. "One more thing before we start," said Izuku. "How about we change the rules of this game a bit?" The stadium fell silent as people whispered to one another. "What is that kid doing?" they were asking. "What do you have in mind?" asked Shoto. "No loses on technicalities. This is a fight between you and me, and the first one knocked unconscious loses. No disqualification for stepping out of bounds. No height limit and no restriction on support equipment," said Izuku. "That's a bold Todoroki." "Shoto, do you accept these changes?" said Midnight. "Just one question. What support equipment do you use?" asked Shoto. "Nothing much, just this," said Izuku as he withdrew from his pocket a small device that looked like it was meant to fit on someone's forearm. Shoto nodded his acceptance. Meanwhile in the stands. "What the fuck?" I yelled as I jumped to my feet. How in the name of all the gods, real or not, did Izuku manage to get his hands on a scientific ninja tool? I mean, it's probably not the same thing, but damn it all, is that what my brother has been cooking up in his lab for the past 2 weeks? "Something the matter, Madara?" asked Nezu. "Yes, is something wrong, young Madara? I mean, I understand that this isn't really traditional, but," began All Might. "It's not that," I cut him off. "That device that Izuku asked to be able to use, I know of it. I just didn't think that Izuku would have made his own version." "Why is that, Madara? Do you not approve?" asked Nezu. "Oh, don't get me wrong. I approve of him thinking outside the box. It's just that this feels a bit too much like cheating," I said. "In what way?" asked All Might. "That device, you could call it a shortcut to jutsu," I said. This made them blink. The staff of UA was well aware of just how powerful my jutsu were, but they also knew that each one was the result of tens of hours of research and experimentation built upon years of basic chakra training and discoveries. "I thought that he couldn't use jutsu. If you knew of this shortcut, why didn't you take it?" asked Snipe. I glared at him, because, at that time, I hadn't discovered Fuinjutsu yet, and it would have made me dependent on support equipment to bring out my full potential. "What is Fuinjutsu?" asked All Might. I closed my eyes and sighed. They don't know of this. After all, Fuinjutsu is one of my most powerful tools, and it's not like I wanted to tell them in the first place. Think of it as a computer program. A set of instructions that make the computer behave a certain way. It's the same deal with Fuinjutsu. A set of written instructions that make chakra behave in certain ways and produce certain effects, like jutsu for that matter. In fact, my barrier, Ro-Ayas, is a Fuinjutsu. "So that was what those pieces of paper were, Fuinjutsu seals," said Nezu. I nodded. "Correct. To use jutsu one must have control over his chakra, knowledge on how to shape it and on its various nature transformations, and enough power to pull off the effects desired. Fuinjutsu makes it so that the first 4 criteria are waved away, and as long as you pour enough power into the array, the effect you desire would come out in the exact same way every single time. You may not know this, but Izuku is a prodigy with seals, and he's more proficient in their use than I am. I should have expected that he would create such a device," I said. "Both contestants ready?" asked Midnight. Izuku got into a fighting stance, his Fuinjutsu tool that contained his relatively small arsenal strapped comfortably to his right forearm. "Start!" The crowd roared as Shoto let loose a wave of ice. In response, Izuku pulled back his fist and charged it with Sage Chakra. Swinging it forward, Izuku broke through Shoto's ice. 2 quick movements of his fingers activated the device under his arm and let loose a jutsu. Fuinjutsu wind style. Air cannon high-velocity winds swooped through the area as they shoved Shoto off the platform. Man, this is crazy. With one attack, Izuku Midoriya sends Shoto Todoroki out of bonds. If not for the changed rules of this match, this would surely mark the end of Shoto Todoroki's chances in this sport festival. What do you think, Eraser? There was silence after that. Right, back to the show. Down in the arena, Shoto was picking himself off the ground. If one were to see his expression, one would see quite clear disbelief on his face. One move, Shoto mumbled to himself. Suddenly he snapped his eyes upwards only for his gaze to meet that of Izuku. Heterochromatic gray and blue met electric green, and Shoto saw a terrible resolve in those green eyes. "You bastard," screamed Shoto as he launched another glacier at Izuku. Izuku jumped out of the way, and with a few quick motions of his right hand's fingers he thrust his arm forward. A stream of fire intercepted the ice meant for him, burning a path through which Izuku shot out of the iceberg. The remaining ice impacted the outer layer of Orochimaru put up by Madara. As Shoto looked around, he couldn't help but notice the 7 shields with 7 layers that were now protecting the stands from the debris of the fight. Shoto threw more ice at Izuku. His advantage was at range, or so he thought, but every shot of his was either intercepted by a super punch or dodged and melted with fire. Shoto knew he couldn't contend with him for long. His body was already suffering from frostbite. "You're slipping, Shoto," said Izuku. "What? That ice of yours, it takes a toll on your body. Your last attack was weak, and I can see frost beginning to form on your body. Are you really going to lose out of a petty grudge?" "Shut up." Shoto threw a massive wave of ice at Izuku. With 2 swift movements of his fingers, a giant wall of earth rose up to defend him. Shoto's attack was stopped dead in its tracks, and Izuku retaliated by letting loose a bolt of green lightning that Shoto barely managed to shield himself from. "You know nothing," screamed Shoto. "I will never use my right side. I won't give him the satisfaction of using his quirk." Izuku had quite enough and burst into a flash step, closing the distance and punching Shoto so hard that he flew across the grounds to the other side of the stadium. "It's yours, your power, not his. You decide what to do with it, and it's not like you're bound to him," shouted Izuku back. Shoto rose from the ground, and in that moment the moments with his mother flashed through his mind and fire began to flicker on his right side. As he looked up though, he couldn't help but look at Endeavor. "Where are you looking, you bastard?" yelled Izuku as he closed in and punched Shoto again. "I'm right here. I'm your opponent. Stop being such a little bitch, always looking for his daddy, and take control of your own life. Your own destiny. Everyone's giving their best, and if you think I'm going to let you even approach victory with only half your strength, then you're clearly mistaken." It was then that Shoto exploded in an inferno of ice and fire, and Izuku couldn't stop the grin that came onto his face. "You're insane. You know that? Trying to help your enemy when you could have simply shoved me aside. What kind of maniac does that?" Izuku laughed. "I'm going to be a hero. How could I not help someone in need? Now enough talk. Come at me with everything you've got," yelled Izuku. "Okay, you asked for it." Shoto's flame and ice began to grow as Izuku activated full cowl, his body becoming engulfed in green sparks of lightning as sage chakra flooded every cell in his body. With a flick of his wrist, a small pellet-like scroll shot into his palm. The 2 boys rushed to meet one another at the center of the arena as they launched their attacks at one another. Shoto threw flame and ice as Izuku responded by activating his final move. Drawing the full 100% power from One for All, Izuku shunted this power through his reinforced coils, down his arm and into his fist where it activated the seal within the pellet. At the last moment, Izuku opened his fist and prepared himself for the recoil. From his palm shot out a white beam of energy that struck Shoto's attack head-on and not only stopped it, but it also punched through, reaching Shoto and exploding with enough force to knock him unconscious and embed him into the stadium's wall. The crowd was silent as the smoke and dust cleared out, but when they did they saw Izuku standing, his uniform top ripped to shreds and breathing hard, but there was not a scratch on him. "Winner! Izuku Midoriya!" yelled Midnight. This seemed to rouse the crowds as they began to cheer. Those cheers only intensified tea in the air as a sign of victory. "I have to say, little brother, you impressed me," I said, unable to keep the smirk from my face. We were currently in Recovery Girl's office where I was running a check on Izuku's arm. It was quite easy to notice what he did with One for All, especially with my Sharingan. "Really?" asked Izuku. "Yes, really," I said with a smile. "You found a way to use jutsu, and more than that, you found a workaround to use 100% of your power without damaging your body." Izuku ducked his head and blushed. It astounds me how he can switch from a confident, insult-spouting teenager to this shy kid before me. I reached out to ruffle his hair but stopped. Izuku noticed this. "Ni-san?" he asked. "I shouldn't be doing that, not anymore." "Why? You've grown, Izuku." Izuku looked at me with wide eyes. I never truly realized this, but Izuku truly has grown. I can't keep treating him like the kid he used to be. I felt arms around me, and as I returned to reality I saw Izuku hugging me and crying softly. I hugged him back. Such a needy kid, I'm proud of you, Izuku, Toshinori too. We're both proud of you. Now dry your tears and let me give you a checkup, okay? Izuku let go of me and sniffed a bit. Yeah, okay, thanks Ni-san. I checked his arm with my now semi-perfected diagnostic jutsu and frowned. What is it? Asked Izuku. Well, you aren't injured, but the coils in your hand are stressed. You probably won't feel it today, but don't exert yourself too much. Chakra coils are not something that recovery girl can fix. I expect that your arm will be quite sore after this, I said. Izuku nodded. It was nothing truly bad, per se, but he should really only use this move as a last resort. I returned to my seat to watch the rest of the matches. The next match between Shinso and Obara. Like Izuku's match, Shinso requested that he be allowed to use support items and the girl agreed. Such a stupid thing to do. Once he got his utility belt, Shinso threw a flashbang and a smoke grenade. Obara made a vine dome to protect herself, but that got cut to shreds by a sword wielded by Shinso. Honestly, from the style of combat he was using, I could see that he was a novice at fighting. He couldn't have more than 2 months of experience using that blade under his belt. Just enough to wield it correctly and not kill himself or anyone else with it. Obara screamed and was caught by Shinso's quirk. She was quickly made to forfeit after that. With my advanced hearing, I could hear the other pro heroes mutter about wasted talent, and I couldn't help but smirk. Come next semester Shinso will be in 1A, no doubt about it. Next up was Ida and Tokiyami. Ida tried but lost, since all Dark Shadow had to do was keep Tokiyami in the field until Ida's Recipro burst wore off and then literally throw the immobile boy out of the arena. Katsuki vs Kirishima came next and Katsuki won. It was a hard-fought battle for both of them and it left Katsuki tired and his hands were shaking. Clear signs of quirk fatigue. Round 3 kicked off with Izuku vs Shinso. A much expected fight, even if everyone knew what the end result will be. It did surprise, however, how they reached said result. There were no quirks or chakra used. Shinso with a blade and Izuku barehanded fought quirkless in an impressive display of martial prowess. In the end Shinso yielded after Izuku caught his blade and broke it. The crowd was a bit displeased, but I wasn't, and likely most top heroes were not. Shinso will be a fine underground hero and I've made up my mind about recruiting him. Even as he was defeated, the general course cheered for their champion. Next up was the fight between Katsuki and Tokiyami. Katsuki won after he figured out Dark Shadow's weakness to light. And now, the fight you've all been waiting for, the fated battle between two childhood friends who took the number 1 and 2 spots at the entrance exam and have so far dominated the competition. One shall rise and one shall fall. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Izuku Midoriya vs Katsuki Bakugo. Let the final match begin. Katsuki and Izuku both stood at opposite ends of the field. You could feel the tension between them. Are the contestants ready? Asked Midnight. The two remained silent for a moment, after which Katsuki spoke. What's with the silence, you bastard? Aren't you going to give me the same fight as half and half? Why should I? Replied Izuku. Are you looking down on me? Yelled Katsuki. Izuku scoffed. Hardly, you're not even worth looking down on. Katsuki's eyes widened for a moment before they narrowed viciously. Small explosions began popping from palms as anger filled his entire being. Ready, start! Yelled Midnight. In a grand explosion, Katsuki flew at Izuku, who responded by powering up with Sage Chakra and intercepting him in mid-flight. Izuku was far faster than what a normal person could see or react. Before Katsuki could even comprehend what had happened, Izuku's fist was buried in his stomach, making him vomit what little fluid there was in his stomach and simultaneously halting his advance and emptying the air from Katsuki's lungs. It all led to an unceremonious fall to the ground for Katsuki, all the while Izuku was casually standing by his side, fist in a slightly outstretched position. The crowd fell silent at what happened as Katsuki struggled to stand. Is this it? Asked Izuku, looking up. Katsuki found the sight that had haunted his dreams since he could remember. Izuku was looking down at him with pitying eyes. Stop it. Don't look at me like that, you fucker. Then how would you like me to look at you? Have you seen yourself lately? Ever so desperate to prove your superiority over others that you take to bullying those beneath you? It sickens me to think that I once called you my friend, said Izuku as he delivered a kick to Katsuki just as he was getting up. Katsuki was sent flying, but he managed to keep himself from going out of bounds. One could see the pure rage beginning to form on Katsuki's face. This isn't happening, this isn't how it's supposed to go down. I'm the next number 1. I'm the one meant for the top, so how can a small fry like him have this much power? He's cheating, he has to be. What are you thinking about, you moron? Still trying to justify your existence? Asked Izuku with a smirk. This isn't like me, Izuku thought, but it feels so good to rub it in like this. As he was thinking this, Izuku also thought back to all the times his brother had helped him when he was still a depressed wreck. He couldn't help but think that without Madara, Katsuki would have been his image of victory. Without Madara, Izuku wouldn't be even half the hero and warrior he is now. I'm truly blessed. Now all I have to do is rip out this rotten shard of my past. Damn it, "You bastard small fry!" yelled Katsuki as he launched himself back at Izuku. As he approached, he became a literal whirlwind of explosion and destruction in the vain hope that it would work as an attack and also prevent Izuku from getting a hit on him. "What are you doing, idiot?" said a voice from his side. "Huh?" In an instant Katsuki found himself on the ground with his arm twisted behind his back in a painful position and Izuku sitting on top of him. "Is that really your plan? Throw enough explosions out there and hope to beat me? Honestly, I don't even know why I'm humoring you. You haven't had a day of formal training in your life. Any fight that you can put up is whole dependent on your quirk. Surrender and I won't embarrass you any further," said Izuku. Katsuki could not believe what he was hearing. Him surrendering? Impossible. He will fight to his last breath if he had to. Katsuki strained against the bonds to get his palm facing upwards. Just as he began, he was lifted up by his shirt and thrown out of the arena. The horn sounded. "We have a winner. Izuku Midoriya is the winner for the first year's sport festival." The crowd cheered as Izuku rose his hat and waved at them. Back on the ground, Katsuki could only watch as the one whom he had mocked for years and be a simple pebble in his road suddenly transformed into an insurmountable mountain whose summit he could not even see. The sport festival ended somewhat anticlimactically. Oh, the fight was great, but it was evident that Izuku was toying with his opponent from the moment the match began. I expected it to happen like this. Katsuki had been an open wound in Izuku's heart since he failed to gain a quirk. This being said, I have seen the beginnings of something of an anti-quirk mentality in Izuku. It most likely stems from how he was treated as worthless by society for not having powers and the suddenly getting not only the most op quirk but also the use of chakra. In his match with Katsuki, Izuku did not use full cowl at all. Just Sage Mode enhancement was enough to get him to outperform Katsuki in every field possible. Add to that Izuku has been tirelessly training his fighting skills for over a year while Katsuki relied on his quirk and you get a recipe for disaster. Even without chakra, Katsuki couldn't have stood his ground against a well-trained quirkless fighter. The actual award ceremony went on without much fanfare. Both myself and All Might arrived in style to congratulate the winners and we even posed for a photo. Even now, I'm seeing people on the web in awe of us. Still, to me this picture is far more valuable than propaganda. All Might and I are standing next to Izuku who has the first place medal around his neck. I'm at his side, with an arm around his shoulders throwing up a peace sign and All Might is standing behind us with a hand on each of our shoulders looking very proud. Izuku, of course, is grinning like a loon. All that's missing is our mother and it would be a family photo. Let's not dwell on that too much. Today is a day of celebration. A new symbol has been born into the world and he has yet to prove himself. It was raining outside. It was as if the world could sense his mood and decided to laugh at him. After the sports festival was concluded, Katsuki was left in a state of limbo. To the entire world he looked to be one of the best students in 1A. In his own mind, all he could think of was the shame he had to bear. Thrice now he'd been bested by Izuku. Once at the entrance exam, then again at the battle trial and finally now at the sports festival. It hurt to stand on the number 2 spot at the stadium, but somehow it hurt even more to see Izuku smiling as he, Madara and All Might all posed for a picture together. Katsuki had seen what the news were saying in regards to that photo. The Trinity, the 3 pillars, the legendary 3. All these were the names used to describe All Might, Madara and Izuku. Katsuki was no fool. He knew that as he was right now, he couldn't compete with the power of Madara and All Might. But it should have been different with Izuku. For as long as he could remember, it had been Katsuki that was the best, the fastest and the smartest. Well, maybe not the smartest, but definitely the bravest of the two. Now he was nothing. Was he always a pebble on the road? A roadblock for Izuku to surpass and not the other way around? Katsuki was lost. That much was obvious to him. Once he got home, he couldn't bring himself to care anymore. He went to bed without dinner and woke up and went to school without going through his morning exercise routine. A routine that he'd been following religiously for the better part of 2 years. Even the large number of offers for internship couldn't rouse him. He wasn't the first in this either. Even worse, he was third, after Todoroki and, of course, Izuku. Was this his life now, always playing second fiddle to Izuku? Never being good enough to stand on his own, a forever prisoner of Izuku's heroic shadow? Katsuki liked to think himself a rational person, despite his temper. Even so, he couldn't quite shake the unease he felt when Izuku was better than him at something. It made him angry and for the longest time he simply accepted it as annoyance at the useless Deku who wasn't content with his place at the bottom. If it wasn't for Madara, Katsuki would have put said Deku in his place, but since Madara was there and much more powerful than him, Katsuki quenched his rage with putting down the other rabble that tried to reach for his place. Maybe he needed a good long walk to collect himself. He remembered a nice secluded spot in the mountains where he used to train with his quirk, in fact that may just cheer him up a bit. Rain was pouring down by the bucketload and thunder and lightning flashed in the sky above. Katsuki cursed his luck. Of course, It would start raining the moment after he was finished with his workout. So here he was, trying to get to a shelter somewhere. Only problem was that he had lost track of time and it had gotten dark outside and the downpour wasn't helping matters at all. In fact, it was making it even worse. The ground was either a muddy bog or slippery rock. "Damn this rain," muttered Katsuki under his breath. Who the fuck though, it would be a good idea to go and train in the mountains. Oh yeah, me, fuck me. Worst of all was that he was lost and his phone was smashed to bits. He fell some time ago and because the rain interfered with his quirk's functionality he fell on his side and smashed against a rock. He was lucky that his phone took the brunt of the damage. Otherwise he'd be trying to get to safety with a busted hip. Even so, the weather wasn't doing him any favors and a lightning bolt struck a tree next to him, causing it to come crashing down on Katsuki. He managed to dodge, but failed to get a good grip on the ground and fell in a ravine. Katsuki tried to save himself with his quirk, but the dirt and water had diluted his sweat to the point that he couldn't even get a spark from his hands. He fell on the dirt bellow and pain shot up from his leg. Katsuki didn't manage to bite back a scream. Looking down he could see his foot had been twisted at an odd angle. He didn't break his bones, but he did break his ankle. At any rate, he was now more or less immobile. Every attempt to move was painful, but Katsuki knew that he couldn't let it end like this. Even as his strength left him and the beginnings of hypothermia began to set in, Katsuki used what little strength he had left to drag himself to safety, somewhere out of the rain. As he fell unconscious, all he could see was a small speck of light in the distance. "Useless runt, you're so cool, I hope to be just like you when I grow up. I'm sure that you'll be a great hero with a quirk like yours. Didn't you hear the news? They say he's quirkless." "What's a quirkless? Is it some kind of disease?" "Now boys, you take care of Izuku, after all quirkless people aren't as resilient as normal children. You useless Deku, don't go near my brother ever again, or I'll make you regret the day you were born. I'm sorry, you just looked like you needed help. Are you alright, Kachan? That fall looked pretty nasty." "I don't need your help, useless Deku, ha, ha, I, All Might welcome you, Katsuki Bakugo to Uahai. You'll be happy to know that you scored second. Damn Deku, how dare you try and usurp my place. I'm the number one, you hear? More like number one loser, after all, that's what you said the number two spot was, isn't that right, Kachan? Hero team wins. ROAIAS. Have you seen yourself lately? Ever so desperate to prove your superiority over others that you take to bullying those beneath you? It sickens me to think that I once called you my friend. Darkness, that was all that was in this place. Am I dead? Katsuki asked himself. He failed. He lost. What reason was there for him to live any longer? Friends, the only one he'd ever considered his friend, just made his feelings quite clear on that matter. Family? Sure, he had his dad and that hag of mother. They'd mourn and others would pay lip service at his funeral, but all in all he'd be forgotten come winter. Just another body in the ground. I see you're awake, came a voice. Huh? Katsuki opened his eyes and looked around. He was in a wooden house with a stove burning wood in a corner of the room he was in. That was odd. Usually even the most remote of places had gas or electric stoves. He heard a chuckle beside him and instantly snapped his head in the direction of the sound. What greeted him was no villain or woodsman, or anyone he could reasonably think of. By his bedside was an old man, with flowing white hair and a tired old wrinkly face. He was dressed in a dark orange yukata and had the brightest blue eyes he'd ever seen this side of All Might. Who are you? Where the hell am I? Asked Katsuki, trying to stand. He was pushed back down by the old man. You must rest. You are safe in my monastery. I am the last of the monks that used to live in this place. Monastery? Katsuki never knew that there was a monastery around here. The old man chuckled again and thusly broke Katsuki from his thoughts. Who the hell are you? I've never heard of a monastery around here, yelled out Katsuki, returning to his default mood when faced with the unknown. No, I suppose you haven't. After all, not many of your generation want anything to do with history, said the old man. What? It's nothing. Rest, young warrior. The night is young and you need to recover your strength. We'll leave some clothes for you to change into, and if you want, there is some tea by the stove, said the old man. Katsuki watched silently as the old man got to his feet and walked to the door with the aid of his cane. Normally he wouldn't have given him a second thought, but seeing the way he walked and carried himself, Katsuki couldn't help but think of Madara and Izuku. They too had this regal grace round them as they walked, not that Katsuki would ever admit it. Katsuki decided to do something productive and threw the sheets off him. Strangely enough, his ankle didn't hurt as much as he should. Looking Dao had taken off his sweatshirt, trousers and socks, leaving him only in his boxers. His left foot, the one he'd injured, was bandaged and set properly, and he could feel a whiff of a mixture that was probably used to treat the swelling. All in all, it was quite professionally done. Looking around, he found his clothes hanging by the stove, and by his bedside there was a loose shirt and pants, the nightwear the old man left him. Looking around and seeing no one, Katsuki removed his slightly wet boxers and got himself dressed. He then set them up to dry alongside the rest of his clothes and went back to sleep to the sound of rain falling on the building's roof. Katsuki awoke the next morning. From what he could hear, it was still raining. Looking around, he could see that the fire in the stove had burned out during the night. Next to the door, there was a set of clothes. Seeing as his workout clothes weren't the best of choice for the weather outside, Katsuki swallowed his pride and got dressed in the clothes the old man left for him. He couldn't help but think about that man and the supposed monastery he was in. Katsuki opened the door and he was surprised to see that it led to a walkway that surrounded an inner courtyard. "You're awake, I see." Katsuki spun around. There, a few feet away from his door sat the old man. He appeared to be reading some book or another. "Of course I am. Not that I'm not thankful or anything, but do you have something to eat? I could really use some food." It galled Katsuki that he had to beg for food in this manner, but he wasn't stupid enough to starve himself for the sake of pride. The old man raised an eyebrow at the question, seemingly surprised. He reached beside him and took a bowl of something that he handed to Katsuki. Without question, Katsuki dug in. After he finished, he set the bowl down and took a seat next to the old man. "Okay, now spill. Who are you? What is this place? And no dodging unless you have a phone handy so that I can get out of here," said Katsuki. "If you wish to leave, then you are most welcome to do so. I'm not holding you here against your will, far from it. It's curious though, how you managed to drag yourself to the gates of the monastery before falling unconscious. You've still not answered my questions," the old man laughed. "You may call me the custodian." Katsuki raised an eyebrow at the name. "You doubt my word? I doubt your sanity. Being up in these mountains must have messed with your mind, but fine, don't tell me. Now what is this place?" The old man seemed to lose his mirth for a bit as he said with sorrow. "This is where the past comes to die." Katsuki cocked his head to the side. What kind of an answer was that? Before he could demand an explanation, the old man got to his feet and began walking. Without being asked to, Katsuki followed. The old man led him down several hallways. Lining the hallways, Katsuki could see weapons from ancient time. Swords, axes, spears and more were hanging off the wall. "What is this?" Katsuki involuntarily asked. The old man turned around to see this young charge looking in wonder at a katana. The old man had seen that look before and seeing it on this young boy now, it lit a spark in him that he was sure had long been snuffed out. "Come. That blade was meant for the hand of a warrior, not that of a child," said the old man. Katsuki recoiled his hand and glared at the old man, but followed nonetheless. He was led down several stairs before finally arriving at a pair of giant doors. The old man twisted a pattern on the knobs on the doors and with a clang they creaked open. As he walked inside, Katsuki couldn't help but wonder at what he was seeing. Entire rows of books as tall as the room and seemingly never ending. Each book was in its own case that looked to be airtight. Katsuki turned to the man, but before he could speak, he was cut off by the custodian. "This is one of the great libraries entrusted to the different orders of wise men across the world. When the quirks became mainstream and heroes rose up to guard the people, there were those that saw the stories and legends about ancient heroes to be damaging to the minds of young people. They did everything in their power to stamp out these works of literature to ensure that the population remained pacified. This is one of the only repositories left in the world that contains that ancient knowledge." Katsuki was speechless for a moment as he tried to come up with the right things to say. "Why me? Why show this to me? Because you are no hero." Katsuki felt that something was constricting his heart. He couldn't help but fist his borrowed clothes as he looked in anger at the old man. "I'm a hero student at UA, you old man. I will be the #1 hero, you hear me?" yelled Katsuki. The old man looked on impassively. "If this is true, then why did you have a look of anguish on your face as you said that?" Katsuki recoiled and looked at the old man with wide eyes. The old man closed his eyes and hummed. "When I look at you I see something that I haven't seen in 100 years. A true warrior shackled by the chains of conduct that society has thrust upon you. I doubt that if given the choice you would really become a hero." "That's not true. I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to beat All Might and be #1. I've trained every single day of my life." "Foolishly," cut in the old man abruptly. "I've seen you do battle at the festival. You fought only with your quirk, relying on it for every attack. To rely solely on a single tool is unbecoming of one such as yourself." "And what the hell do you know about me?" snapped Katsuki. The old man was silent for a bit as he approached Katsuki. "You are in turmoil, that much is clear. You have great potential but your imbalance is your undoing. Let me help you, Katsuki Bakugo." "Are you alright, Kachan? Damn it, old man, I don't need your help, I don't need anyone's help." The old man was silent as he bowed his head. When one is at their lowest point, he is open to the greatest change. "Should you ever need it, I will be here, come find me." As if by magic, the rain had cleared during the time they were in the underground library. Without saying a single word, Katsuki got dressed in his now dry clothes and took off. The old man was there, watching silently. Katsuki glared. He'd show him. He'd show the world, he was a hero, and nothing will ever change that fact. With renewed resolve, Katsuki followed the winding path from the monastery down to the village at the base of the mountain. Even so, he couldn't forget what the old man had said to him, "You are no hero."